Good afternoon. I now call to order the March 18, 2025 meeting of the Audit Committee of the Board of Education of
Good
Baltimore County.
afternoon. Anybody out there that can hear me
We can hear you.
and/or see me?
Yep, we can see you. Okay, so I'll start again. Good afternoon. I now call to order the March 18, 2025 meeting
Anybody?
of the Audit Committee of the Board of Education of Baltimore County. In accordance with Board Policy 8311, the chair of a committee, at their discretion and after consultation with the staff liaison, may convene an in-person committee meeting. Otherwise, all committee meetings will be held electronically. Today's audit committee is being held virtually and broadcast through Microsoft Teams. In order to conduct this meeting efficiently, all voting items this afternoon will be done by roll call vote. Board members will say their names before making and seconding a motion as applicable, as well as requesting discussion on an agenda item. As a courtesy to the committee, I ask that you inform Mr. Edwards or Ms. Barr if you must leave the call by using the Teams chat feature so that a quorum can be maintained. Mr. Edwards, please call roll to determine the presence of a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Booker Dwyer,
Present.
Ms. Frempong,
Present.
Mr. Harvey, or Ms. Harvey, sorry,
Present.
Mr. Young, Mr. McMillian. Rod, I see you're there. We heard you before. I think you're on mute. Okay, 3 present.
Okay. Did we lose Mr. McMillian?
I believe it still shows that he's on, but it looks like he's on mute.
Yeah, I can see him still on, and I think he's in the meeting.
Okay. So a quorum being present, we will begin. Mr. Edwards, please call the roll of staff members participating in today's meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Barr,
Present.
Mr. Fletcher,
Present.
Ms. Manna,
Present.
Ms. Jamison,
Here.
Dr. Roberts,
Present.
Mr. Knox.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other attendees that I have not listed? Thank you.
If committee members have questions that are outside of the scope of the reports presented this afternoon, please email Ms. Barr or me with your questions. We will follow up with the appropriate individual to get answers. Ms. Jamison, please proceed with the extended suspension and expulsions audit report.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, could you please advance the slides? Mr. Edwards, that's okay. It doesn't look like you have it up. You can close that out, please. That window. Wonder if I can share. Can everyone see what's on my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so this presentation is about the extended suspensions and expulsions audit. The objective of this audit was to determine if the processes related to extended suspensions and expulsion hearings were completed in compliance with the BOE Policy 5560 and with the BCPS Disciplinary Procedures Manual. To start out with some commendations, we had some really good communication between Dr. Roberts and our office, and we really appreciate that. Whenever we asked for information, he got back to us very quickly, very thoroughly, so we appreciate that. Another commendation we wanted to mention was Dr. Roberts prepared a student conduct hearing officer orientation manual that contained very helpful information for what we are calling in this audit SCHOs, student conduct hearing officers. This manual contains a lot of helpful information for those who are learning their job or just need to reflect back on best practices. Another commendation we'd like to bring forward is the SCHO training. The SCHOs are afforded multiple opportunities during the year to attend training relevant to their position, which is very specialized, so very good to have that. And then the other commendation, the final commendation, was that we noted that prohibited students, which were students in grades pre-K through 2, did not receive extended suspensions or expulsions. They are prohibited from it, and no one in BCPS in those grades received any of those consequences. Now,
Oh, Ms. Jameson, I hate to interrupt you. Could you put your slides in presentation mode?
yes, I'm sorry. I was not thinking I was going to have this up here. Hold on. How do I do that?
If you hit from current slide from right there,
Here?
no, go ahead up into your ribbon,
Uh-huh.
and then down into the icons. As second one over says from current slide.
Got
There
it.
you go.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thanks.
All right, the next section is the results in brief. The first result, there were 3 results in the report. The first result was about hearing packets. Certain hearing packets that we tested were either missing, received after the deadline, or contained inconsistent information. So what we sampled was 45 discipline matters. There was no hearing packet on file. And for 15 of the 45 that we sampled, the hearing packet was not provided within 24 hours. Our recommendation, I'm going to go forward on this. Our recommendation for that was that there should be collaboration between the director of the Office of School Climate and Culture and the necessary individuals to ensure that the hearing packets are provided completely and by the deadline. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Roberts to discuss what the corrective action was.
Thank you. In lieu of the finding, what we have done since the audit is to shore up the communication with the chief of schools and also the executive directors of schools who supervise our school principals, because it is the principals and the assistant principals who are responsible for getting those packets to the student conduct hearing officers within 24 hours. And as a result of the audit, we've created a report that will go to the executive directors monthly that speaks to the timeliness of those packets being uploaded.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts.
Thank you.
I'm going to go on to results in brief, result number 2. The second result in the audit was that school conduct hearing officers, or a school conduct hearing officer, held a disciplinary hearing without having the results of a manifestation determination review. And in this case, what that is manifestation determination reviews are for all students who have either an IEP or a 504 plan. And it's required that this meeting be held prior to the disciplinary meeting too, so that the school people can determine whether the disciplinary matter was a result of a manifestation of a disability of some sort. So in this one case that we looked at with, we looked at 15 students who had IEPs or 504s. For one of them, the SCHO held the hearing, even though the manifestation determination meeting was not convened until the day after the disciplinary hearing. So in this case, what we are recommending, and I'm going to go forward, is that the director of the Office of School Climate and Culture should require that manifestation review determination results be included in the hearing packet. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Roberts for his response.
Thank you. We are working to ensure that only once the manifestation meeting has occurred that the student move forward for a disciplinary hearing. We have a very strong partnership with the individuals who work on Focus, our student information system, and we are trying to leverage that technology to make certain fields in Focus required so that individuals will be required to acknowledge that a manifestation has been held. And so that's how we're trying to ensure that we do not hold hearings without documentation of the manifestation. And we're also requiring that there be a form inserted in the board suspension packet that speaks to the fact that that manifestation has held.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. The final result was that disposition letters were missing or lacked critical information. And a disposition letter is something that the SCHO completes at the end of each hearing that basically lists out what happened during the hearing, what the facts were, what the witnesses may have said. And in our audit, what we found was that they sometimes did not have complete information. Part of the reason for this is because the disposition letters are generated using a mail merge. And if the fields that are being mail merged are blank, you're not going to have any information on the disposition letter. So we found that there was no disposition letter on file for 2 of the 45 students in the sample. That required evidence and arguments related to the matter was not included in 25 of the 45 letters. We found that for 32 of the 45, an explanation of how the evidence and arguments presented contributed to a finding of imminent threat or of serious harm or chronic and extreme disruption was not included. And 5 of the 45 disposition letters contained incomplete sentences, blanks after statements, or duplicate statements. And again, this was most likely due to the fact that it's a mail merge document. So what we're recommending for this result is that the director of the Office of School Climate and Culture should provide professional development to school conduct hearing officers on the disposition letter writing process. And I will again turn it over to Dr. Roberts for the corrective action.
Thank you. We have already begun that professional development around our disposition letters. The first thing we did was to come together as a group and review some of the letters and outline areas for improvement. We work collaboratively to produce, if you will, somewhat of a template. It is a mixed template, I sort of call it, because there are some fields that are a mail merge feature where we are pulling from the student information system, but we also now have free text fields so that student conduct hearing officers can enter very specific information into the letters. What we have learned is that when something goes to appeal, there is an expectation that the student conduct hearing officer's letter truly explain the reasons for the removal. And when I look at the letters that we were producing prior to the audit, they were very generic. They said something along the lines of based on the information presented. We are now working to specify what that information is. We are working with the members of our BCPS focus team to embed more detailed letters into our student information system so that student conduct hearing officers are able to type in very specific reasons for why a student was removed, so that in the event that something goes to the next level, the individuals providing the review at the next level are able to truly understand what was the student conduct hearing officer's thinking around a particular removal. And so we have ongoing professional development scheduled around our disposition letters. Right now, we are, as I said, working with the focus team. When the focus team has finished that enhancement for us and we actually begin using that, we will then engage in sort of a disposition study internally where we review letters as a group provided by each student conduct hearing officer so that we all have a better understanding of what constitutes a strong disposition letter.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for that explanation.
Mhm.
At this time, my presentation is over and I'd be happy to take any committee member questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members?
this is Mrs. Harvey. I have a few questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Harvey.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for this work. I think it's important for the system and the community and students and families to understand this process and to make sure that we are executing it according to standard. So the sample size you said was a total of 45. Is that correct?
No, it was actually a total of 60 students.
Okay.
On the methodology, page 9, it says we tested a sample of 60 extended suspensions and expulsion cases. 45 were non-IEP 504 students and 15 were IEP 504s. And the reason we split them up is because there was different requirements.
Right. So the manifestation determination, that was in one of those 15 cases, we found that there was a hearing that was conducted prior to having the manifestation determination, and that the part of the resolution was to ensure that that determination is now submitted with the packet.
Correct.
Is that correct? And we are still requiring the packet to be submitted within 24 hours.
Correct.
And so I guess my question is do those manifestation hearings within the system happen within that time frame? Something happens today,
Yes,
at 10 o'clock, and then tomorrow at 10 o'clock, they're required to have the entire packet with the determination. I'm just trying to see, is that an actual...
And I'll say from the audit perspective, the 14 of the 15 were completed within the time frame. And I can ask Dr. Roberts to chime in because he has much more expertise with that situation than I do.
Sure. When a student with a disability is being recommended by the principal for removal greater than 10 days, that's when the manifestation meeting is required. So in our training, we tell our school administrators, when a student has violated the code of conduct and you see that you are going to request a removal, start to schedule the manifestation meeting as soon as possible. Now, when a student violates the code of conduct and the principal is requesting that the student be removed, that hearing, we have 10 school days to hold that hearing. We generally schedule the hearing after only day 5. So from the date of the incident until the hearing, there are 5 school days. So that manifestation generally happens within that 5-day window. And then we ask that the packet be to the student conduct hearing officer 24 hours before the date and time of that scheduled hearing.
So it's 24 hours prior to the hearing and not
Yes.
24 hours after the incident? Is that what I'm hearing
That
is the process?
Yes, that is correct. It's 24 hours before the scheduled hearing. And one of the reasons for that is we want to give the student conduct hearing officers the opportunity to review the board suspension packet, make any notes, jot down any questions, but also we are obligated to provide that packet to students, parents, and attorneys so that they may preview the evidence that is going to be presented at that hearing.
Okay. So just so I'm clear, the packet in these instances is not due 24 hours after the incident or recommendation. It is due 24 hours before the scheduled hearing.
That is correct.
Am I getting that is correct from our auditors?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. And then the next question I have is the disposition letters. I appreciate the work in recognizing that a mail merge may not be the best way to inform families of the specifics under which there's a recommended extended action. And I heard that there was some collaboration around making those letters more substantive and specific to the details of what occurred. Are those letters also reviewed for legal sufficiency? Is that required in this process? Because I just heard you say that, when parents have a right to appeal and all of those things, and this letter gets sent to attorneys and all of those things. So are they reviewed for legal sufficiency?
Yes and no. We start with somewhat of a template, which is standard language that appears in all of the letters. And that is what our law office scrutinizes and makes sure that we are saying the correct, using the correct terminology and in the correct way. So those parts of our letters are reviewed by the law office. Then what we are doing now is we are creating an opportunity using focus where we can sort of go off template, and that is where we will include very specific information around why a student was removed from school. So it's sort of a twofold. Yes, they are reviewed by our law office, but the law office does not review the letter at the conclusion after the hearing officer has produced the letter.
Okay, thank you for that. And then last question, and I realize you may not have the answer to this. We reviewed 60 cases out of
Yes.
how many? What was our total pool?
Oh gosh, that I do not have. I would be happy to get, wait, oh no, wait. There were 634 extended suspensions and expulsions during the period July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other board members have questions?
This is Board Member Frimpong. I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Frimpong.
Thank you. So Ms. Harvey did speak to some of the questions that I had with regards to that manifestation. But for that one case where the manifestation review was not completed prior to the hearing, is there something in the process that would allow um, that particular meeting to be stopped / postponed or delayed until the manifestation review would have been complete? Is that something that would have been asked by, like, a parent could ask, if they have representation could ask, or would it be that the hearing just had to go through as it was, even though the manifestation review was not complete?
Well, so at the
No.
time of the audit, there was nothing in place to stop it, and that's why the hearing did go on. But I will say that in that one case, the manifestation review team, determined that the offense was not a manifestation of the disability, so it did not actually have an impact on the results of that particular disciplinary meeting. But Dr. Roberts could probably speak more to your question.
Yes. As I said earlier, COMAR requires us to have the disciplinary hearing within 10 school days. And we purposely schedule those hearings after only day 5 so as to allow for any kind of delays that may come up, whether it's inclement weather, a parent needs to reschedule, a manifestation team meeting hasn't been held, or what have you. So we have this built-in 5-day window where we can make adjustments.
So thank you. And I hear that, and it makes sense what you're saying. But again, I guess I'm coming back to this meeting still went forward, and they're like, where were the stop guards for that? Again, can a parent speak up to say, hey, this is, violation of COMAR, we shouldn't be having this meeting? Or is it up to the BCPS staff that's in that meeting to say normally, like, we cannot move forward with this because the manifestation review hasn't been completed? And I understand in the end that the manifestation review said that the student's disability did not impact the behavior. But that wasn't known at the time. And this is something we were actually just talking about in another committee meeting, because with the policy having to deal with student conduct. And I asked that question about our special education students, because unfortunately there's a disparity, and they do have more frequent instances of behavior issues, referrals, suspensions. And so again, I guess trying to understand from a parent perspective as well, what are the options if it's saying this is what it's supposed to be? So where was the stop for somebody to say we cannot have this meeting?
Right. I understand completely what you're saying. The manifestation, the whole purpose of the manifestation meeting is to determine if there is a relationship between the student's disability and their behavior. And if it's determined that it is, then the student isn't eligible for a removal. We impress upon the schools to have that manifestation as soon as possible so that the hearing officer has that information. Now, the reason we want that information is so that we can make an informed decision around whether or not that student is going to be removed. Now, if we take the case of a student for whom the IEP team determined that there was a connection between the student's behavior and the student's disability, then that student would not be eligible for removal because of the connection between the student's disability. In this particular case, with the manifestation team having determined, well, and we didn't know that at the time, then the student was removed. But if there is that connection, then we certainly would not have proceeded with the removal. Even though the meeting may have been held, the removal would not have occurred.
Okay, so thank you. And I get it. It seems like I may be asking the same thing. So now with this audit and the process, and kudos that out of the 15, it was just one instance of that. What is happening different now besides I'm trying to go back to look at my notes. Tell me how, like, if this actually plays out, how is it going to be different now as compared to before?
Well, we're working with the focus team to have our school administrators acknowledge and focus as a requirement whether or not that manifestation meeting was held. So it isn't simply, it isn't that we hold a meeting by oversight. We want to have a clear indication of whether or not. So we're trying to use the technology that is available to us to compel that we adhere to the process. We're also, I meet with the student conduct hearing officers monthly where we address issues that have cropped up since the previous month. And so we want to ensure our student conduct hearing officers have access to SPS, which is our special ed database, where if there is no indication perhaps in the packet that a meeting was held, or the student conduct hearing officer just doesn't see any evidence, they can now go into SPS themselves and look among the special ed documents to see if there was a manifestation meeting held. And they have been, through training, told that in the absence of a clear indication of a manifestation meeting having been held, that they are not to hold the hearing.
Okay, thank you. And so with that report, I don't know, is this between the completion of this report or this audit and these new measures that you put in place, has there been enough time where you've been able to see a report and to see, I guess, how well that this particular intervention is working?
We have not had the opportunity to sort of leverage focus, if you will, but I do know that through our regular meetings with the student conduct hearing officers, there have not been any hearings where that has occurred where there hasn't been a clear indication of the manifestation team having been held.
Okay,
And
so that sounds
Board
good.
Member Frimpong, we will also do a follow-up on this audit. In the actual report, Dr. Roberts has listed anticipated completion dates, and when those come to pass, we will be taking a look to ensure that what the corrective action that they said they were going to implement has been implemented.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Mr. McMillian, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. I just have one. So, Dr. Roberts, what's the root cause of the missing or lack of information that occurs in some of the hearing packets?
With regards to the disposition letters or the packets in general?
The packets in general. So that result one, their results, they're finding the first findings referencing that?
I think the reason why perhaps some of the packets are not being provided in a timely manner is school administrators are trying to juggle many things at once. But I think with the creation of this report detailing by school those cases where we did not receive a board suspension packet in a timely manner and sharing that with our executive directors of schools, I do expect to see that number diminish. I did send a letter out or an email out to our executive directors explaining that this was indeed a finding, attached the report to it, and told them that we were looking forward to a 95% adherence rate to this. So we've shared the information with our executive directors and schools and secretaries, because often it is the clerical staff who is uploading. When a board packet gets uploaded, I shared with our school leaders and clericals that the packet is stamped by date and time. So that is the level of information that I'm providing to the executive directors each month. So if a hearing is scheduled for this Friday at noon, I can see exactly when that packet was uploaded. And if it's not received by this Thursday at noon, that column under compliant gets a no. And that's the level of detail that we provide to our executive directors so that they can see by school how timely these packets are being uploaded.
Okay, that's helpful. And then is there a built-in quality control mechanism? So I know you talked a little bit about doing some additional professional learning with some key people involved in the process, but is there a protocol so that there's kind of this internal check happening, so that first you go here, then someone else is reviewing it to make sure that information is full and sufficient? Is that kind of protocol happening now, like a quality check protocol?
I think it is informally. The first check occurs with our clerical staff, the secretaries to the student conduct hearing officers. When a school makes a request for a hearing, we've also created a template email that goes out to the administrators of that school saying, we received your request for a hearing. Please make sure you do the following. And one of the things that it lists, it says upload the packet within 24 hours. And so the secretary is sort of the first line of checks and balances. And then I've instructed the secretaries by day 3, if you've not received that packet from the school, please reach out to the school and inform them, hey, your hearing is scheduled in 2 days. Please make sure you upload that packet in a timely manner. And so that is the way our hearing officers have on occasion had to postpone hearings simply because the packet was not available. And so we are endeavoring to do a better job of adhering to our own policies and rules around holding the hearings, but we have to partner with the executive directors as they are the direct supervisors of the principals.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts.
Mhm.
Okay, if there are no more questions on this, we will move on to the next, to our new business. So Ms. Barr, please proceed with the proposed fiscal year 2026 Office of Internal Audit Work Plan.
Thank you, Ms. Booker Dwyer, and good afternoon. I'd ask Mr. Fletcher to please bring up the draft work plan to the cover page, please. Thank you. So this draft work plan was posted to Board Docs last week, and I hope that everyone has had a chance to review it. In accordance with Policy 8400, the Chief Auditor is responsible for completing a broad, comprehensive internal audit work plan that is reviewed and approved annually by the Board's Audit Committee by June 30 of each fiscal year. This internal audit work plan will be developed based on a prioritization of the audit universe as defined in International Professional Practices Framework, using a risk-based methodology, including input of executive leadership and the Board. Mr. Fletcher, if you could scroll down to the proposed project section of the work plan, please. So we've designed our work plan to address what we consider to be risk areas while limiting the scope of work to what can realistically be accomplished with the available resource hours. In FY26, we plan to accomplish several audit activities. We would like to complete 9 new audit projects identified through the risk assessment process. As you can see, we plan to do ERP system audits, looking at the overall general controls in the newly implemented Enterprise Resource Planning System, Oracle. We have 3 areas in payroll that we would like to audit: a general operations audit of payroll, ensuring compliance, integrity of data processing, and adequacy of controls; the extended learning opportunities programs of Spark, EDLP, and EYL, and extra duty assignments, or EDA. We also plan to look at mileage reimbursements for accuracy and completeness. We would also like to review contracts and consultant agreements, basically making sure that they're executed, used, and monitored appropriately. And also looking at declining balance procurement cards, looking at their usage, ensuring allowability of what is purchased, and alignment with program goals. We also have 4 areas in the school activity funds: the 3-year cash analysis, which is something that we do annually, and will continue to monitor cash balances at all schools and identify and investigate any anomalies. We also would like to do online digital ticketing at the secondary schools, a more detailed in-depth account analysis to ensure that all anticipated revenue is received. At the elementary school level, we would like to do some account analysis and compliance related to field trips. And as a sample from all schools, secondary and elementary, we would like to look at the discretionary accounts through account analysis and ensure compliance. We would also like to look into the Department of Human Resources and evaluate the pre-employment screening process, conduct inventories related to CTE equipment and special education equipment. And then in addition to the newly identified projects, we would continue to do follow-ups and assess the status of management's corrective action in relation to prior year findings. We would complete any prior year carryover projects, special requests, and any unplanned audit activities. Continue to administer the fraud hotline and investigate any allegations related to fraud, waste, and abuse, and complete general office responsibilities such as attendance at meetings and staff development activities. We will be seeking the approval of our FY26 work plan at our next audit committee meeting scheduled for April 22nd. I thank you for your attention. I would now be happy to answer any questions committee members may have related to this proposed work plan.
Thank you, Ms. Barr. Any questions from the committee members?
This is board member from Pong. I have a few questions.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Frimpong.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barr. I just had, so kind of 2 questions about the same thing related to page 3. And it's just the part where you talk about that the audit plan itself is risk-based and that it's fluid. So even though you're presenting this now to us, there is the possibility that it could change. And so one thing I wanted to know, I guess, about that is, how do you guys evaluate yourself or review how you perform your change management? So you already have a process laid out for determining what goes on the audit plan. And then, but if you have to pivot throughout the school year, how well do you guys actually manage that process so that you're able to make sure the new audits that have been added are completed in a timely manner, but not lose track of the audits that you ended up having to like push out or delay to this school year or even a different school year?
Yeah, so we do track all of that, Ms. Frimpong. And what we do is if there is a reason for a deferral of a project in the current year work plan, we write a memo explaining why it's being deferred. and document that. And then sometimes it can be deferred because it's highly audited by other external agencies, and it just doesn't make sense for us to do that. Sometimes it gets deferred because when it comes time to do the audit, something may have come up, and that we interact with the process owner, they explain what's going on, and it just makes sense for us to defer it to perhaps another fiscal year, perhaps another quarter in the current fiscal year. It just depends. So that's also documented if it goes into another fiscal year. So we are just presenting our current, proposed FY26 work plan. But in addition to the FY26 work plan, we lay out multi-year plan. So we will also identify projects for FY27, 28, and 29. We do that, but I think last year there was some confusion in the presentation of those additional years added onto it, where the focus really needed to be on the most current fiscal year work plan. So we do have a long range plan as well. And if it has to be deferred, like if something will come up that in this work plan that would have to be deferred to next year, that would be documented. It would then move to FY27, and then something in FY27 would bump to FY28 and so forth. But I'm hoping, because we have vetted all these projects very thoroughly with either the chief of the area and or the process owners, that we've identified projects that would not need to be bumped in this year unless something much more pressing would come up next year that would require us to shift some resources. But I don't anticipate any of these projects having to be moved or deferred. I mean, that's my hope, by doing everything in advance this year and meeting with the process owners more thoroughly this year. We listened to the feedback that we got from committee members and committee leadership, and that's why if you notice, we don't have tentative objectives. We have the actual audit objective that we discussed with the process owners and the chiefs. We've identified the time of the year that is probably reasonable for us to be out in the area. So we've tried to be more careful and more refined in the development of our work plan. But we do track, back to your question, we do track any deferrals through a memo, documented in a memo, and then in the long range plan as well. And we do that throughout the year.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Barr, I think you and your team are incredibly thorough, so I appreciate that, the documentation and the information that you guys present to us. I just asked the question just from a perspective of trying to understand. And the other piece of it, I guess, is the things that you were saying as far as documenting. I don't know that necessarily actually comes up, though, in our committee meetings. So even perhaps if, I guess there can be some conversation too, like when we talk about the status, and I know we get the quarterly reports, but even in those conversations, maybe talking a little bit more about if there's a change, why the change is, like you said, all the things that you document, but just, I guess, maybe being more vocal about those things, just so there's a better understanding of how, again, this particular work plan can kind of ebb and flow because it is a living document.
Right. And if you look at our quarterly updates, we will, if a project has been deferred, it will say deferred on such and such a date. Sometimes it might have a brief explanation in there, or I might say it verbally, but certainly moving forward, I can provide more information at the audit committee meetings when I present the quarterly updates. But if you take a look at previous quarterly updates, you'll see that it is documented if we've indeed had to defer a project.
Great, thank you. And then right here, this is perfect. The slide that's up right now. So we have the ERP system. There's going to be an audit across basically the entire school year. So we have quarter 1, quarter 2 is HR and payroll, and then quarter 3, quarter 4 is fiscal services. But just for clarification, when you're saying quarter 1, quarter 2, that's quarter 1, quarter 2 of our school year, not the calendar year, right? So the ERP, HR, and payroll is going to be the first one that starts before the fiscal services.
Correct. So quarter one would be July, August, September. So it's fiscal year, July 1 to June 30. So when you say school year, we do it by fiscal year, which is July, August, September is quarter one, October, November, December is quarter two, January, February, March is quarter three, April, May, June is quarter four.
Perfect. And yes, that's what I meant. I used the wrong terminology there. Okay. And then for the contracts. So within, let's see what page was that?
That's down
Like
below.
page 5. You
Mhm.
have the contracts, and I see where it says various.
Mhm.
And you mentioned it a little bit in your presentation, but can you get into more detail about what it is that you're looking for with these contracts? For example, is this going to be specific to a content area? Are we looking only at English? Are we looking only at math? Is this going to be specific to something like special education or even curriculum? What is it that you're looking for in these contracts? So, for example, we get contracts as board members. There are contracts that come to us from committee, and sometimes there's requests for extensions or additional money. And so, are you looking at how that money is being used, or just that the process itself?
The process itself. So, and we did get a listing of, I guess about a month or two ago, of contracts from purchasing and also the consultant agreements. But my concern in taking a sample from those now, they might not be as relevant as something that would come in, say, in the next fiscal year. So, but what we're looking at is the process being used to execute the contracts, how the contracts are being used, for example, the terms of the contract, and then the individual offices and or schools that are responsible for monitoring the contracts to make sure that the terms are being carried out. So I don't know what contracts we're going to look at right now, but that's the intent, is to review the contracts in that regard. Make sure there's proper execution, that we're using them as intended, and that they're being monitored, to make sure the vendors are doing what they're supposed to do, and also what we're supposed to do, as an organization in the contracts. And the consultant agreements are a little bit different. Oftentimes, those are with individuals, sometimes individual people versus a company. And I did happen to notice that some were right up at the $49,999 mark. And anything 50,000 and above would come to the board for approval. So we would look at some of those things too, to make sure that the proper processes are being followed with respect to those agreements, and maybe should it go to a contract and should it go out to bid. Does that answer your question, Ms. Frimpong?
It does, and it also makes me think about the question, and I don't know if it's something that will or will not be answered in the audit, but like you said, if these consultant agreements are written kind of right up to that last dollar and penny, to the point where they don't come to us, is it something to consider whether or not maybe because it's consultant agreements versus something else, a different type of contract, that the numbers should be different anyway?
I don't believe so. I mean, it's $50,000. That's the dollar amount, and in effect, a consultant agreement is a contract. When you read the terms of the consultant agreements, it does read like a contract. But again, if it's with an individual versus a company, it might be different, and that's something that we would have to explore. And I don't have that answer right off the top of my head right now without getting into the project itself.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other committee members have questions?
This is Ms. Harvey. I have a
Yes.
question.
Go ahead, Ms. Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a really quick. I'm looking at the plan, and the last item on the plan is the hotline and its administration. Is that just a notation of the work that your office does? Because it says there is no audit focus, but it's occurring quarters 1 through 4.
Mm-hmm. we do administer the hotline and conduct investigations. So investigations are not audits, they're investigations. So it's whatever the allegation is what we would investigate, unless it's something that we would turn over to the superintendent's office. We have that process that's been established. It's anything management related or not related to fraud, waste, or abuse. Everything goes and is turned over to the superintendent and her staff for their review and disposition.
Right.
So that's why it's not an audit. It's an investigation. So that's why I put NA in there.
So I just wanted to be clear. I'm clear on the function of the hotline and how you administer it, and the purpose for it. I thought that this item was there would be an audit of the effectiveness of the administration of the hotline and the investigations, but that is not the case.
I see what you're saying. No, I mean, I can separate that out. I just had everything together in the one document, but I can separate that out because I believe we had it separated before. But I understand I can separate it out so that there's no confusion there.
So just so I'm clear, this is just a notation that you all perform that function. It is not a part of the work plan to say that the hotline and its administration and investigations will be audited.
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Well, Ms. Barr, Mr. Fletcher, Ms. Manna, Ms. Jameson, and the whole audit team, I just want to say thank you for incorporating some of the committee members, some of the things we brought up a little while ago. I see it incorporated in this plan. So thank you so much. I really do see how you have made some revisions to this process. So I don't have any questions at this time, but I just wanted to say that I recognize that you all have put some work into this and taken feedback and used it to inform the development of this plan. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if there's no more discussion on the FY 2026 Office Internal Work Plan, so the next meeting of the Audit Committee will be on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. I will now entertain a motion to convene an administrative function session to discuss the approval of the October 2024 administrative function minutes and investigations conducted by the staff of the Office of Internal Audit.
So moved from Pong.
Second, Harvey.
Thank you. And may I have a roll call vote? Mr. Edwards, could you do a roll call vote?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thank you. Ms. Booker Dwyer,
Yes.
Ms. Frempong,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Young, Mr. McMillian.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Since this motion has passed, this meeting will now be adjourned, and the committee members in the Office of Internal Audit staff will leave this Teams meeting and go into the Teams meeting scheduled for administrative function.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.